Welcome everyone to my Clorinde build guide. In this guide, I will briefly go over Clorinde's kit, her artifact options, main and substats you should look for, and what weapons you can use. Keep in mind that all information in this video is not officially out yet, and therefore highly likely to change. All information in this video is only up to date as of the making of this video. But without further ado, let's get into Clorinde's kit. Clorinde is a 5-star electro damage dealer. She wields a sword, has a crit rate ascension bonus, scales on attack, and deals with the bond of life mechanic. For the purposes of this guide, I will very briefly go over her kit, but if you want a detailed explanation of what she does, feel free to check out my kit overview video. Clorinde's normal attacks deal 5 hits of physical damage and are not a major part of her kit. Clorinde's elemental skill will switch her into the Night Watch state. In this state, you can use your normal attack to deal electro damage using Clorinde's pistol. If the current bond of life on Clorinde is less than 100%, using Clorinde's normal attacks in this state will grant her a bond of life worth 35% of max HP, and the attack will deal increased damage. Once the bond of life is 100% or greater, you will no longer gain a bond of life, and the pistol attack will deal the regular amount of damage. During the Night Watch state, using Clorinde's elemental skill will allow her to perform a lunge attack with her sword instead. If there is no bond of life on Clorinde, the lunge attack will deal the regular amount of damage. If the bond of life is less than 100%, the lunge attack will have increased damage and AoE, and the attack will now heal a percentage of the bond of life. When the bond of life is greater than 100%, the damage, AoE, and healing will be further increased. Just a little note here, the bond of life percentage on the HP bar can go up to 200%, so a bond of life taking up half of the HP bar is equal to 100% of max HP. Additionally, in this state, Clorinde will not receive any healing. 80% of the healing received will instead be converted into a bond of life. When Clorinde's pistol attack hits an enemy, it will deal Usia-aligned electro damage once every 10 seconds. All attacks in this state are considered as normal attack damage. The Night Watch state has a duration of 9 seconds and a cooldown of 16 seconds. Moving on to her burst, Clorinde will deal AoE electro damage and gain a bond of life. This burst has a cooldown of 15 seconds and an energy cost of 60. As for Clorinde's passive, her first passive is very important to her damage. When any party member triggers an electro-related reaction, Clorinde will gain a buff equal to 20% of her attack to her electro-infused attacks during the Night Watch state. This buff can stack up to 3 times, to a maximum of 1,800. So if, for example, Clorinde has 2,000 attack, 20% of 2,000 is 400. If you were to stack this 3 times, you would get a buff of 1,200 that gets added into your base damage, which is then multiplied by crit and damage bonus. What this does is help Clorinde deal much higher damage. Without this passive, Clorinde's base damage is nothing amazing. Her second passive will only activate once you reach a bond of life worth 100% of max HP. Once this criteria is met, when the bond of life increases or decreases, Clorinde gains a 10% crit rate increase for 15 seconds. This can stack up to 2 times, and each stack has its own duration. In combat, you should be able to maintain this passive during Clorinde's Night Watch state. Additionally, when the crit rate buff is active, healing received during the Night Watch state will be fully converted into a bond of life, instead of the 80% of healing received. And lastly, she has an exploration passive, where she marks resources unique to Fontaine on the minimap. Before going over her best artifacts, I would like to first give an explanation into the different assumptions and rotations I'm using to calculate Clorinde's damage. During the Night Watch state, you have either the option of using your normal attack to deal electro damage with Clorinde's pistol, or using your elemental skill to deal electro damage with her lunge attack. The lunge Clorinde does will deal a lot of damage if you have a bond of life worth 100% of max HP or greater. To achieve the bond of life, you must first use Clorinde's pistol attacks, which grant a bond of life. Each attack will grant a bond of life worth 35% of max HP, until you reach 3 attacks which brings the total bond of life to 105% of max HP. And then you can use Clorinde's skill to deal damage with the lunge attack. So ideally, Clorinde will do 3 hits with her pistol and then a lunge attack, which will heal the bond of life and then rinse and repeat. Clorinde's burst deals a lot of damage and also grants a bond of life, which at level 9 is worth 114% of max HP. This allows you to immediately deal the most damage with Clorinde's lunge attack in the Night Watch state. So, in the best case scenario, the ideal rotation would start with Clorinde's burst, then cast her skill to enter the Night Watch state, perform a lunge attack, then do 3 pistol attacks to gain back the bond of life, then perform another lunge attack. Then keep repeating this process until the Night Watch state duration runs out. Clorinde's attacks during the Night Watch state are considered as normal attack damage, so weapons and artifacts that buff normal attacks will be good on Clorinde. And in regards to teams, Clorinde being an Electro character can fit into many teams. Quicken teams are probably going to be some of her best teams. Quicken is an additive reaction that helps increase Clorinde's base damage and makes up for her lower multipliers. However, you also have many other options such as a Chevreuse Overload team, a Hyper Bloom team, or an Electrocharge team. There are many possible teams. Compared to a Chevreuse Overload team, Quicken is slightly better. However, you don't have to stick to one type of team only, and throughout the guide, I will be talking about builds for teams other than Quicken. For Clorinde's talent priority, you will want to first level up her skill, then burst, and lastly, normal attacks. The damage Clorinde deals in her elemental skill state is considered as normal attack damage, but it has its own scaling which is tied to her elemental skill level. Leveling Clorinde's normal attacks is not necessary, as you wouldn't normally be using them. Moving on to artifacts, and firstly, Quicken artifacts. With Clorinde being a character that uses the Bond of Life mechanic, Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy is going to be Clorinde's best in slot. In a Quicken team, this set is around 7% better than the next best option. Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy's 2-piece bonus increases attack, and the 4-piece bonus increases damage dealt by 18% when the current Bond of Life increases or decreases, stacking up to 3 times, which brings it to a total of 54% damage bonus. Another set like Gladiator's Finale will be very strong, as it provides a 35% normal attack damage increase for sword, polearm, and claymore-wielding characters, which, as previously mentioned, increases the damage of Clorinde's electro attacks during the Night Watch state. Thunder Soother is a set that increases electro damage by 35% against enemies affected by electro. Keeping enemies affected by an electro aura is not going to be very consistent, and therefore I wouldn't really recommend this set in most teams, but it can work in some teams like an electro charge team. Echoes of an Offering can potentially be much better in teams aside from Quicken. This set's 2-piece bonus increases attack, and the 4-piece bonus has a chance of buffing normal attack damage on each normal attack hit. If you don't get the buff in your first normal attack, the chances of getting the buff increases on your next hit. This set's normal attack increase is additive, meaning it increases your base damage, which for Clorinde is good as she doesn't have high multipliers. However, when mixing this set with Quicken, which is an additive reaction, you start facing diminishing returns, which makes it rank slightly lower than in other teams. But you can definitely use this set if you already have a good 4-piece. Keep in mind though that Echoes of an Offering is ping dependent and not a universally good set. You can also mix and match 2-piece sets. These combinations can perform fine compared to other 4-piece sets, especially a 2-piece attack and electro damage bonus. Thundering Fury and Gilded Dreams are both usable in a Quicken team, but not that good for other teams. In other teams like a Chevreuse Overload team, the ranking doesn't really change much. In an Overload Electrocharged or a Mono Electro team, you don't really want Elemental Mastery, so reaction-based sets are not going to be that great. Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy is still going to be Clorinde's best set, with Echoes of an Offering being around 5% behind. Echoes of an Offering becomes better in other teams compared to Quicken due to the reasons mentioned before. Marishosi Hunter is not recommended since it's not going to be very consistent. Clorinde does not have HP draining in her kit, and if you have Farina in your team to drain HP, you are going to face problems when Clorinde's HP reaches 50%, as she can't receive any healing during the Night Watch state. Although this should work better on Clorinde than on Arlecchino, since Clorinde can easily heal herself with her lunge attack. I still wouldn't recommend this set due to its inconsistency, but if it's possible to maintain Maréchaussée Hunter's crit rate bonus with Clorinde's lunge attack healing and Fiorina's HP drain, then this set should be on par, if not better than Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy. But I have not played Clorinde myself, and can't really judge how feasible that is without playing her myself. Moving on to stats. Before going over main stats, let's talk about energy recharge. Clorinde's burst can deal decent damage and grant a bond of life, and therefore using it every rotation would be beneficial. We don't really have the exact numbers for Clorinde's energy generation, so what I'm saying here is just a very rough estimate and nothing I'm 100% certain of. But with Clorinde's 60 burst energy cost, around a 160% energy recharge requirement is probably a safe bet as to how much energy recharge Clorinde would need. If you have Fischl in your team to battery Clorinde, you could probably get away with less energy recharge, around 140% energy recharge. Keep in mind that these are only rough estimates, and her actual energy recharge requirements might be a bit different, give or take 10% or even more. In a quickened team, Clorinde will probably prefer an attack sans over an elemental mastery one, similar to other electro units. Clorinde herself won't be triggering aggravate enough to justify going for elemental mastery over attack. But if you're playing a quickened team, you can use an elemental mastery sans if it has much better substats. For other teams, attack is better. As for your goblet, an electro damage bonus is going to be almost always better than attack. Clorinde, as previously mentioned, doesn't have very high multipliers, which makes her base damage lower. Stacking a lot of attack is not going to be as beneficial as increasing elemental damage bonus or crit. Someone like Ayaka can use an attack goblet due to her having high attack multipliers, but the same doesn't apply to Clorinde, and therefore it is better to invest into crit and other damage bonuses. This gap only widens in a Quicken team, as Quicken is additive and therefore multiplied by electro damage bonus. But you can use an attack goblet if you have that much better substats. And lastly, for your circlet, go for either crit rate or damage. But keep in mind that Clorinde has a crit rate ascension and can get up to 20% bonus crit rate from her second passive. So make sure you don't overcap on crit rate. As for substats, you first want energy recharge until your target is met, then crit rate and damage, attack, and elemental mastery if you're playing a Quicken or Hyper Bloom team. Moving on to weapons. This calculation here is for a Quicken team. However, when it comes to other teams, the ranking itself shouldn't change much, but elemental mastery weapons will perform worse. Clorinde's signature weapon, Absolution, should be her best in slot. Absolution has a high base attack and a crit damage stat. Through its effect, Absolution provides a further 20% crit damage increase, and whenever the bond of life percentage increases, damage dealt will be increased by 12% for 6 seconds. This can stack up to 3 times, to a maximum of 36% bonus damage. While this is a strong weapon, other 5 stars are also very close. Haran Geppaku Futsu, Mist Splitter Reforged, Light of Foliar Incision, Uraku Misugiri, and Primordial Jade Cutter are all very close, and within a few percentages of each other. All these 5-star weapons are just as good as Absolution, so you definitely don't have to go for it. Finale of the Deep is a Fontaine craftable weapon, a free-to-play accessible option. This weapon increases attack, and when the character wielding this weapon uses their elemental skill, a bond of life will be created. Once the bond of life is cleared, the wielding character will gain an attack bonus based on the bond of life amount. This weapon is one of the better 4-star options. Between both Battle Pass weapons, the Black Sword is a much better option as it provides normal attack damage bonus. The Black Sword is slightly better than Finale of the Deep and competitive with Lion's Roar. Lion's Roar provides attack, and through its effect increases damage by 20% against enemies affected by Pyro or Electro. If you can maintain a 100% uptime on this effect, this will probably be the best 4-star in terms of damage. However, maintaining constant Electro on enemies may not always be possible and can lead to damage being a bit inconsistent. But this weapon is still great, and one of the best 4 stars. Iron Sting is also usable in a Quicken team, but not better than the other craftable weapon Finale of the Deep. Although keep in mind that other teams such as Overload and Electrocharged don't benefit from Elemental Mastery. The same also goes for other weapons, as Elemental Mastery is not that useful in most other teams. But that's all from this build guide. I will be releasing a complete guide, including teams when Clorinde is close to her release date. But that's all for now. Thank you for making it till the end, and thank you for watching.